Good morning, POWIIS. Today we are going to be listening to classical music. And many of us, we hear classical music, we're like, oh, I'm ready to go to sleep or whatever. But classical music is really amazing. It is very powerful in the depth of feeling that it can create, in the depth of thinking that it can create while you're listening to it. That's why they say you have the Mozart effect. Anyway, today we are going to do a little bit of active listening. We are going to perform for you 3 pieces, each from a different century of Western music, starting with the Baroque, which is the 17th century. Then we're going to move over to the classical period, which is then the 18th century, and then to the Romantic period, which is the 19th century. Each type of music has a very different feel to it, and I will give you a little bit of help to get you to really listen for what you have to be able to pick out in the music. So the first piece is actually by Johann Sebastian Bach, and he was born in 1685 in Germany. He was born to a family of musicians. They were all professional musicians, and he was trained by his brother. And he worked so hard, like at that time there was no electricity, right? So there was only candlelight. And Bach would work late into the night using only one candle, because candle was actually quite expensive, and he would copy music because there's no photocopy machine. How he learned was to just copy a lot of music of other composers, and he learned from there. He worked so hard that actually towards the end of his life he lost his eyesight. He became blind, so he was a blind musician. The New York Times calls him the most important composer in Western music. In fact, in all of music, in the history of music. And one of the reasons is because Bach set the scales into place. Before Bach, people were playing all kinds of scales, but when Bach came in, he set the minor scale and the major scale, and he wrote 48 preludes and fugues to set all those scales in place with music. And so this piece that we are going to perform for you is the Bach's Double Violin Concerto, BWV 1043. It's a 3-movement work. That means it comes in 3 sections, but we are going to only perform the first section for you. The first section is called the first movement, and it's an allegro, which means lively. When you listen to this piece, it's about these 2 violins having a conversation, and not just any conversation, an intellectual conversation. So it starts with one violin saying, oh, you know, this is my theory of how things are going to go, and the other violin says, no, I don't really agree with you. I'm going to say something else. And then they start talking about this intellectual stuff, and it gets heated, and they start arguing, and it gets a little crazy, and then towards the end you will see what happens, whether it resolves or they end up not being friends anymore. So without further ado, please welcome Jos and Aaron and Mr. Kam to the stage to show you the Bach Double Violin Concerto. So do you think they ended up as friends or as foes? Friends, right? Because right at the end, you heard like from that minor mode, like they were all kind of upset with each other, and then they ended up in this sort of happy place in a major key, and that is called the Picardy Third. And the two of them just walked off and like, okay, let's go have a coffee now. Right. The next piece that we are going to do is a classical piece, and you will hear that the mood is different. And the mood is different also because of the style being different. And you will hear that in classical music, especially with Mozart's music, the melody is really important. And the melody is very memorable. That's why a lot of people like Mozart. You hear it once and you can remember the melody, and that was actually done on purpose. So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born in 1756 in Austria, and he experimented with all kinds of musical instruments, and he excelled in every single one of them. He could play the harpsichord, the piano, the violin, so many things. And at 4 years old, he already started to play piano. At 5 years old, he was already writing his own pieces. And at 6 years old, his father took him and his sister all over Europe to tour because they were so good that they were performing international concerts. And he was successful. Everybody knows the name of Mozart, right? And he wrote so many pieces, but he died quite young, in his 30s. This piece is called Sonata number 11, and he wrote it at the age of around 27. It is not actually a standalone piece. Again, it comes in 3 movements, so first, second, third, and this Rondo alla Turca is actually the 3rd movement of the Sonata number 11. And Rondo alla Turca is actually called the Turkish March. At that time, you know Turkey, right? Turkey was like kind of new to Europe. They just sort of discovered the Ottoman army, and they were very impressed by everything Ottoman, everything Turkish, very exotic for the people in Europe. So Mozart decided, okay, I'm going to write a Turkish march. And so he did. And so this is very quick, simple, rustic, and with amazing melodies. And I'd like to invite Leah Tan to the stage to present to you Rondo alla Turca. I hope you heard the cannons right at the end. dum, dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. You know, they were firing the cannons off and all that stuff. When you listen to music, try to visualize what you're listening to. The third one is from the 19th century, Romantic period. And this is a guy called Cesar Sui, and he's actually Russian. He was born in 1835. And he was actually not supposed to be a musician. He was an engineer. Not just any engineer, he was a military engineer that was an expert at building defenses for the armies. Later on, he became a professor in the university, teaching about fortifications and stuff. But he loved music so much. And he got around with a gang of music enthusiasts, 5 of them. They were called the Russian Five, or the Great Mighty Handful. And these guys, they actually wanted to promote Russian type of music. Because at that time, in the Romantic period, everybody was going like, oh, Beethoven, so clever, Mozart, so clever. And the Russians were like, we are very good too. So let's go into our Russian folk songs and make our Russian folk songs famous throughout the world. And so these 5 people actually did not like people like Tchaikov's. This music is actually because they say, oh, those people are too Western. So you will hear this music is actually quite different from what you heard before, which was more of the Germanic style of music, Bach and Mozart. And now this is Russian. Cesar Sui wrote this Cinq Petituos, which is 5 short pieces. They are character pieces. And the one that you're going to hear is the final one called the Valse. The first one is called the Bandich, which is a witty conversation. The second one is the Berceuse, which is a lullaby. The third one is a scherzino, which is like a joke. The fourth one was a nocturne, is like a night piece. But this one is a waltz. It's a dance in triple time. Boom, cha, cha, boom, cha, cha. You know, it's like a dance. And so yours and Aaron are going to dance on stage with their violins. And you will see the 2 of them. Hopefully, they'll bring the romance out of this waltz. But at the same time, when you listen to waltz, you're thinking, oh, is the tune nice? It's not about the tune. It's, they're using very unusual harmonies. So it sounds a little bit like sideways, a little bit weird. But hopefully you will still enjoy it. It comes in 3 sections, so please don't clap until the very last section is finished. All right, here we go. The PAA Advanced Chamber Ensemble for you. So thank you so much, the Advanced Chamber Ensemble led by Mr. Kam. If you are a good musician and you want to improve on your ensemble work, please remember to join the PAA Advanced Chamber Ensemble. It's going to be a very good experience for you. Anyway, we are running a bit short of time, so we will go back to our classes now. Please remember, next week's TMP is Sister Act. You're going to get a little preview of the production that's coming up soon. So have a great week, POWIIS, and see you next week.